Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I do hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to, depending on wherever you may live or however you choose to read your clock, this early morning, middle of the night bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help this channel to continue to grow and go. They do matter, and they are appreciated. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this early morning or middle of the night bonus upload, shall we? Today's first encounter is a subscriber submission out of upstate New York. And crazy enough is that it has a connection to my world, my life. It occurred in a location that my mom and dad hiked while she was pregnant for me. And this encounter happened in July of 1975. I was born in September of 76. My mom and dad probably hiked this location 6 to 7 months after this incident occurred. Crazy enough, I shared it with my mom and dad, and my mom's eyes were the size of saucers when she heard it. So let's get into it. Hey Jeff, I have two experiences. My first happened in July of 1975. I was 16 and living in a small town just west of Rochester, New York. I had seen a flyer from the Catholic Youth Organization in Rochester promoting a 5-day hiking trip in the high peaks region of the Adirondacks, and my parents agreed that I could go. There were 10 hikers and 3 counselors. The first 4 days and nights were fun but relatively uneventful. Hours on the trail, rarely meeting anyone else on that trail. Living on freeze-dried food, jerky, pemmican, and fruit leather. Sleeping in trailside lean-tos or setting our tents up around a fire. The last full day was spent on an ascent of Mount Marcy. We spent the last night at the base of the mountain. Our tents were set up in a semicircle around the fire. We sat around the fire singing the obligatory songs, telling stories, joking, laughing. We were all in great spirits. One by one, everyone retired to their tents. My tent mate went as well, leaving me alone by the fire. As usual, I was the last one left by the fire. I've always loved the night, especially when I was in nature. So many people don't realize just how alive the woods are at night. The animals scurrying through the leaf litter of the forest floor, the occasional call of a night bird, roosting birds changing their positions. On this night, there was all of that and more. Off in the distance, there was one of my favorite nature sounds, the haunting call of a loon. I sat there looking into the fire for quite some time. I was feeling happy that I had such a wonderful time, but I was slightly upset that it'd all be ending tomorrow. I noticed just how quiet it had become. All the sounds of nature ceased, even that cry of the loon in the distant, far-off pond. The only sound was the crackling of the fire. I looked to my right and scanned the semicircle of tents. As I was doing this, I sensed movement from the corner of my left eye. Turning my head, I saw, about 20 feet away, peering out from between two trunks of two huge trees, what appeared to be the profile of a very large wolf's head, about 6 feet off the ground. A large pointed muzzle, large upright ears, its right eye reflecting the light from the fire. For the briefest moment, I was too startled and amazed to be afraid. It's incredible how quickly the human mind can work, and how many times you can try and process at one time. I remember thinking, much too big for a coyote, and there are no wolves left in the area. If there are, they don't climb trees, and they are not 6 feet tall. As I said, that moment of amazement was brief. It was replaced by fear so intense that I felt it in the pit of my stomach. That type of fear that feels electric and that makes certain parts of the male anatomy shrink and want to crawl back up inside of you. Yet even with this fear, my mind was still going 1,000,000 miles an hour, trying to let it sink in. I could see its right shoulder, what would be its deltoid muscle on a human, looking huge, as did its bicep. Its elbow was hidden by the tree trunk. I could see its forearm. It was held out horizontally. It looked somewhat slender, and its hand not paw, but a hand with long fingers ending in claws hung down at a 90-degree angle. As odd as all this was, what was even odder still was that there seemed to be a primitive, very roughly made woven basket hanging from this creature's wrist. The creature turned its head in my direction and tilted its head and looked at me from under its brow directly into my eyes. There was no bluish reflection as you would get from a coyote when their eyes are illuminated at night, nor did they glow red, like my huskies used to. They were a shiny black like obsidian reflecting the light from the fire. As our eyes met, I was hit with an immediate sense that it did not want me watching it, and also a deep feeling that it was disdainful of me and humans in general, and that if it wanted to, it could take me very easily, and I would disappear into the night forever. I knew I had to get out of its sight, and fast. Since the first day of our trip, it had been drilled into our heads that the last person to leave the fire had to douse it. And for this purpose, we had 2 buckets that we had filled every evening, one with water and one with dirt. As I was the last one to go to bed, the buckets were right next to me, and all I wanted to do was dive into my tent. I didn't want to scream or yell. I sincerely doubt I would have been able to, or douse the fire. I just wanted to get to where it couldn't see me, and more importantly, I couldn't see it. Yet the rational part of my brain told me that I didn't want to be responsible for burning down a large chunk of the Adirondack Park. I grabbed that bucket of water with my right hand and launched backwards from my cross-legged sitting position. I threw the entire bucket onto the fire. The hissing sound and a plume of steam are still very clear to me this day. The tent was no more than 10 feet directly behind me. As I scrambled inside, I yanked the zipper down, and I got as deep into my sleeping bag as I could and assumed the fetal position. That's all I remember until morning. I was in my sleeping bag, head, shoulders, and arms outside of it. I heard birds singing their morning song, and the tent was slightly illuminated by a gray dawn. As I went to sit up, I realized that the tent flap was unzipped, and the lower half of my body was outside of the tent. As I rose, I heard muted voices coming from a few tents, but no one else had come out of their tent yet. I walked a bit away to find a tree and pee behind, and when I returned, one of the counselors had gotten up to prepare breakfast and asked me if I had slept well. I hesitated, and then told him I had. Next, my tent mate came out, and I asked him if he had heard anything during that night, and he said no. By that afternoon, we were on a bus and on our way home. I never told anyone in the group about what had happened that evening. I never told anyone for decades. Pondered this event for years, analyzing it. I was thinking werewolf, but the only concept I had was the Hollywood version or medieval accounts of werewolves such as Peter Stubb. The accounts of them had them amusing the forms of wolves, not something half man, half wolf. The Hollywood versions of werewolves back then were basically just hairy guys with fangs until movies like The Howling came out, with creatures very similar to what I had seen, but only similar. I could not still wrap my head around people physically transforming into wolves, and as the years passed, while I still thought about it occasionally, I was busy working and distracted by life in general, until I heard about Linda Godfrey and the Beast of Bray Road. Bingo! But I still never told anyone about my encounter. Years go by, and one evening, watching TV with my wife, I stumbled across a show called Monster Quest. The episode was about the American werewolf. I was riveted, so much so that my wife tapped me on the shoulder and said for the third time, "Do you want ice cream?" My response was to turn to her and say, "That's what I saw." I then told her of my encounter. I'm pretty sure she believes it was just my imagination back then, but she patted my shoulder and said something about it. I believe I saw it, but then I believe I saw it. I've read dozens, if not hundreds, of encounters online, books since then. I found your channel a while back when I Googled Dogman encounters in the Adirondacks. I'll email you again with an account of a two-dimensional silhouette creature that seemed dog-like, yet almost hyena-like. This was in Newburgh in the mid-'80s. Now, like I said, I shared this experience with my mom and dad probably a year ago, and my mom's eyes were as big as saucers because they had hiked that mountain while pregnant with me. Probably mid-spring, early summer. So about 6 months, maybe a year after, this guy was up there. It's pretty crazy. And then he has another encounter in Newburgh, which is south of me, about an hour, maybe 2 hours away south, going toward the city, which Rochester is western New York. It's not upstate. True New Yorkers don't consider Rochester, Syracuse, Utica anything but western New York. Upstate is where I live in the Adirondacks. Newburgh would be considered Catskills region, Kingston, Poughkeepsie area. Then the city, Westchester, Manhattan, stuff like that. So this is his next encounter. Hey Jeff, I told you I'd send you my second encounter. I don't remember the exact year this encounter happened. It was either early fall of 87 or 88. Now, I had been an Army MP, and my last duty station was the Stewart Army Subpost at Stewart Airport in Newburgh, New York. After I had gotten out of the Army in 84, I decided to stay in the Hudson Valley instead of returning home to western New York. I got a job working for a company that did unarmed and armed security, private investigations, and executive protection. This particular job was surveillance of a sewage treatment plant and a small lake that was the town of Newburgh's water supply. Evidently, there was a bone of contention between a company that wanted to build some houses and local residents concerned that those new houses were too close to the lake and that their septic systems may pollute the water. There was a concern that someone may try and introduce raw sewage to the water supply. I was told that outside of me, the only other people who knew of the surveillance was my boss and the chief of police. My boss met me on site at dusk and showed me where to set up. There's a dirt road that runs around the treatment plant between the lake and the plant. The vehicle they gave me to use was a Ford Escort. Where I parked gave me a pretty decent view of that plant. The trees were thick enough to do a good job of concealing the car, yet I was able to have a decent view of that plant. Directly in front of me, the trees were so thick and old that they made an arch over that dirt road, creating a tunnel of darkness. The front bumper of the car was up to where the tunnel of darkness started. I sat there for hours in the chilled autumn air, windows down, motor off. The person I saw was a worker from the plant who came out to smoke a cigarette about an hour after I started sitting there. Eventually, I got to the point where I needed to stretch my legs. I made sure the dome light would not come on as I got out. I left the door open slightly to avoid making any unnecessary sounds. After stretching a bit, I decided to walk a ways down the dirt road. The trees made it pitch black, and what little ambient light from the plant was there had been completely blocked by those trees. I cautiously walked maybe 20 feet into the darkness when all of a sudden, directly in front of me, I hear this loud, deep growl. Now, at first, I thought someone decided to walk their dog, but then this stench hit me, a stench of musk, decay, and filth. At the same time, a feeling of dread came over me, and a growl came again, a bit closer this time. I was carrying a .357 Magnum at the time. I drew it and held it at the ready as I began walking backwards. It was only 20 feet back to the car, but it seemed like it took forever. As soon as I got to the car, I slid into it, shut the door as quickly and quietly as I could. No sooner than I did this, something came trotting out of the shadows. It was four-legged and huge. If it had approached the car, its head would have been equal to the roof. The head was massive. It had the same general shape as a Bernese mountain dog. It had ruff of fur from its shoulders to the back of its head, looking kind of like a mane. The rest of it was odd-looking. While the body might have been about 5 feet long, it still looked too small for that massive head. The back sloped down considerably, and its hind legs were ridiculously short in comparison to the front. The tail was long, slender, and held out horizontally. It was completely black, unnaturally so. It didn't seem to have any depth to it. I had a feeling that if it turned its body, it would just disappear. No features, no panting, no sounds of its feet as it trotted by 5 feet from my open window. It looked neither left nor right as it passed. Needless to say, I stayed in that vehicle for the rest of the evening. My boss called me the next afternoon to see how everything went, and I told him the only thing I had seen was a stray dog. Nothing happened the next night. That was the last night I worked this particular gig. All right, so I hope that answers people's questions. Are there dogmen in New York? Yes, there are. I actually had a subscriber reach out one time with her experience on Shelter Island in New York City. And the next part of the upload is going to be the Tennessee case that I was talking about. And I don't know why this popped in my head, but it popped in my head the other day. And I was just thinking of, I think it popped in my head when I was talking about coincidences. And I was thinking about everything that has happened, the accident, the computer, the getting pulled over, just weird things, Is it coincidence? Who knows? Read the book, right? But there are no coincidences in these studies, this research that I do and we all do together. The missing persons, the bodies being found, torn apart, and no trace of what did what. So there was actually, I'll just get into it for you. This was back in 2022, I believe. Yeah, almost a year ago. So I was wrong when I said 2. March 7th, 2022. Cheatham County, Tennessee. Human remains were discovered Sunday in Pleasant View. Cheatham County Sheriff Mike Breedlove tells News 2 a group of kids discovered the remains in the woods. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation said there's an active scene near the area of Trent Road. On Sunday, law enforcement searched the heavily wooded area behind a cul-de-sac on Gere Court. News 2 spoke with Dana McPherson, whose property butts up to the area. She said several nights ago she remembers her dog demonstrating odd behavior. About 1 a.m, he just started barking and going crazy, so I opened the door and he just took off. It took me a while to get him back into the house, McPherson said. Although details are still forthcoming, she said the incident is unsettling. Is such a good area. I mean, you never hear of anything like that, McPherson says. No other information is released. Update, Pleasant View, Tennessee. TBI confirmed the body in Cheatham County on Sunday of an adult male. According to TBI, the body was found inside of a cave in the wooded area of Gere Court. An autopsy has been scheduled to identify the victim, or individual, Human remains were discovered Sunday in Pleasant View area of Cheatham County. Cheatham County Sheriff Mike Breedlove told News 2 a group of kids discovered the remains in the woods. TBI said the investigation scene is focused on an area off of Trent Road. On Sunday, law enforcement searched a heavily wooded area behind the cul-de-sac. Then it's pretty much, that article is pretty much word for the same as the other one. But then here is where the coincidences occur, right? Pleasant View, Tennessee. A thickly wooded area in Cheatham County off of Pleasant View Road near the Town Pride development is a playground for 3 13-year-old friends who love to explore. We saw a trail and we thought, it'd be pretty cool to go down that trail, explained one of the teen boys who did not want their identities revealed. The Sunday afternoon hike on March 6th started off as so many had in the past, seemingly uneventful, until an item of clothing kick-started the hunt that would lead them to the biggest discovery of their lives. I found 2 random shoes. This piqued our interest. I put both shoes together, and then one of our friends, he saw a femur bone, one team explained. Instead of running, they pushed further into the woods, leading to their next discovery. It was a random cave we had just found, he said. Inside, with the only glow from their cell phone, another clue. In the cave, we found torn clothes. A prison release card, a credit card, the teen explained. It was at this point the friends decided it was time to make some calls. The first to the police. They said, "This is the strangest call we've had in a while," and told us to take them there, one of the boys said. The second call was to their parents. My son calls me and says, "Hey, Mom, we found a femur bone in the woods." And I said, "No, you did not." "No, you didn't." And he's like, "Yeah, we really did. We called the cops and they're going to put crime scene tape up," the mom explained. They were beside themselves. They were a little bit shook up, They may have solved a missing person case. I hope that they've helped in some way. One of the teens explained going back into the cave with the police. We went deeper into the cave and found the rest of the body, and the head and torso were in the cave, just lying against the wall. You couldn't make out any clothes. It was dark in the cave. When asked if the mother would allow her son to continue to explore the woods, she said with a laugh, "Yeah, hopefully this wouldn't happen twice, right?" TBI confirmed the body of an adult male. An autopsy has been scheduled to determine the identity of the individual. Coincidence, right? It wouldn't happen twice. No. No. Wrong. Because it happened 6 years prior. August 18th, 2016, a man's body was found submerged in water inside a cave on Wednesday in the Marquis Estate subdivision in Pleasant View, according to Cheatham County Sheriff's Office investigator Dale Smith. Smith said the investigation continues and did not release the identity of the individual. The body was found by family members, Smith said. Smith said the Pleasant View Police Department requested assistance from Cheatham County Sheriff's Office and TBI due to the complex nature of the case. The Pleasant View Voluntary Fire Department was on scene with rescue equipment. The man's body was recovered shortly after 3 p.m. Pleasant View Police Chief, Tad Wheeler, said the body was found at 8:30 in the morning. Police then cordoned the area off of Cary Drive, which is a residential area off of Highway 41A. Tennessee Bureau of Investigation spokeswoman Leslie Earnhardt said the cause of the man's death is unknown at this time. She said the man's body will be sent to a medical examiner for autopsy and determine the cause of death. Agents continue to interview individuals as a part of their investigation case. She said authorities on the scene said the victim had possibly been missing since Sunday. All right, so why did I think about this? I don't know. Probably because the word coincidence kept popping up into my head. And I think that I don't think there is a coincidence in this field. This is a field based on theory, a science based on theory, And I think that these two cases are probably related. I mean, 2022, you've got a group of kids, they find some torn up, shredded clothes, torn apart, a body that is leaning against one side of the wall with the head and some other stuff against another wall. And the mom, at the end of all of this, is asked, will you let your kids go exploring the woods again? Ha ha ha. Sure. It's not going to happen again in the same location, right? Wrong. Why? Because it did happen. It only happened 6 years prior. Same location. I mean, we're talking 2 football fields away, if that. This other lady, her dog is going crazy in the middle of the night. It just, there is no coincidence. To me, this sounds like a case of a Dogman. To me. That's like saying Amber Miller and Tony Aarons. Coincidence they were found dead in the same location. No. This is a science based on theory, based on accounts, first, second, third-hand accounts, based on investigating reports like this. To me, this is Dogman. Dogman related. Tony Aarons, Amber Miller, Dogman related. These things are apex predators, apex hunters. They have I don't believe they even care for human beings. Like the guy in New York said, these things are monsters. So I figured I'd share this with you because, it's not going to happen again, is it? 6 years prior. Do some research where you buy your house. Oh, we live in this uppity, whitey neighborhood. Look at us. We're so perfect and nothing can bother us here. Nope. Because there's something lurking in those woods. Otherwise, that one lady's dog wouldn't be going haywire. And then you find bodies in caves. Come on now. Coincidence? I don't believe so. Yeah, just like Tony Aarons, Amber Miller. So anyway, really quick, I wanted to share on something. They never mentioned either one of these people's names. How incredible is that? Never. All right, folks, I did misspeak. In the initial reports, the gentleman who was found last in the last Cheatham cave, he was not named. But the first body that was found and recovered back in 2016, his name was Robert R.J. Manley at 23 years old. So I did want to correct that really quick and set the record straight. But with that, I'd like to thank you all for supporting this channel. It is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect we all deserve, and I do appreciate that, so thank you. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real, they are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.